was. My first op-ed I wrote when I was 14.
Really?
In the Arbutus Times, and I got a pedophile teacher fired. I will admit that I love myself, but I don't love myself like make a musical about myself. Love myself.
That's a whole nother level.
Rocket Man was a movie that was basically put Elton John's songs together as a musical about his life, and like that's the only other person other than James O'Keefe that I know put a musical together about their life. These books, and I said, isn't it crazy that like the lyrics to WAP, what Cardi B's WAP are more acceptable in schools than Dr. Seuss books? And I didn't tag her, but she found the tweet and tweeted at me 3 times, and it became like a national news story that there was a feud and stuff. And like I'm reading this, like the New York Daily News is writing an article about a feud between Cardi B and Tim Young, and I'm like, what?
Hey folks, Christy and John here with Scott off the Press, and Black. We got all excited and said we were going to do this podcast, and then like a couple months later,
it's been a long time. Kids into the mix, a cat, a turtle, lizards.
Yes, life has been insane, but we have a very special guest. Tim runs his mouth on Twitter. Tim Young, and he's an author, a comedian, Washington Times columnist, all of the things, so many things. But I don't know how you have time for anything because I follow Twitter feed, Tim, and it's just like constant flow of amazing content and little quips that you come up with. But yeah, thanks for taking the time to be on with us.
By the way, I look like total white trash right now because I got like a 32 ounce. So this is like, have you guys been to HTO? You're Texans. Do you have an HTO near you?
No.
They don't sponsor me, so this is free shit.
free content here.
But this is like my unsweet tea. They have like 40 different types of tea. They have like 40 locations too, but they have like 40 types of tea. And I go and get my like sugar-free tea because I'm a loser right now. And like, so like liberals on Twitter hate me because of my opinion. And then conservatives will get on me because I'm not like socially conservative enough, or I don't like do whatever. And they don't understand. People don't understand that you can have a massive collection of bourbon and not be an alcoholic,
right?
Or like a drunk. And so like, you know, like 3 drinks, like, man, when I was in DC, most people in DC can throw down, and you can do like 6 to 8 bourbons or whiskeys and still like get tons of policy done. You'd be shocked at how much people can consume and do well. But like 3 a day is a lot when you think about it. It's like 300 calories on the front end, and then the alcohol converts to sugar and screws up all of your digestion on the back end. And so that's usually what my average is a week. I figured out. So I cut it out altogether, and that's 2,100 calories that's gone on top of all the other digestion stuff. And you just drop weight like, and I hate it because I love the industry and I love the juice and the whole thing. But when I'm off of it, I like feel great and lose weight. Yeah. And my favorite local news reporter now, and there's one in DC, but there's one at almost every station. They think that for some reason, if they dance on TikTok, that they're going to be more famous or more sought after. And like my favorite is like the ones that'll be like on their reel. It'll be like them doing a very serious. They'll be like, tonight there was a rape murder of a family of 7 and blah, blah, blah. And then the very next thing is them like doing like a TikTok dance. And you're like, what the who edited this? Like,
well, I mean, one thing I talk about all the time is just how much social media did destroy the whole profession of journalism, just in so many ways. One story I share a lot is, you know, we would always have a board at work showing who was #1 on the social media engagement. And of course, I'm competitive. I wanted to be #1, and I would do an investigative piece on a story I worked hard on, and maybe be shy of making #1 on the board. But if I went to Sonic and tried out their new pickle slush and took a selfie with it, well, I would shoot to #1, and then my boss would be like, everyone needs to be more like Christy so they can get more social media engagement.
Pickle slush is for everyone.
Posed in a picture with a pickle slush. Like this is like what's being encouraged.
That work great in the male demographic.
Or like you were saying, Tim, people would cover like something serious like a murder or a rape, and obviously that's their story assignment for the day. But then you would see this same reporter maybe outside the house, like in between live shots, like just a selfie of them smiling. And it's like, dude, do you not realize how completely inappropriate that is to show that you're covering something that is tragic or of super importance, and you're in between live shots just doing a smiling selfie. Like, really? Come on.
Also, it's the same. And so the same problem happens with, no offense about your pickle slushy. But
I mean, it was a good slushie, though. I will say that.
But the same thing is with like conservative women on Instagram that claim to be like influencers, and Turning Point USA is a real problem with this. They think that they are somehow popular and somehow like moving the needle in politics because creepy guys and teenagers want to jerk off to them on Instagram.
Yes.
That doesn't equate to any kind of value in politics. And I don't understand how this hasn't like quite landed yet. It's probably because the decision makers are creepy old guys that jerk off to these girls on the internet. But like, that's ultimately what this comes down to, right? I mean, that's who's following you. Nobody should give a shit. Okay. Unless you're like doing something like remarkable, nobody should really give a shit if like a girl's putting her butt on the internet. Right. Except for like creepy people. Like it's just, or teens, like preteens. Man, I wish that Instagram existed when I was 12. Right. I mean, would have made life easier.
Yeah. Well, we've had this conversation a lot about that concept. I feel like there's this certain mold, specifically, as you're saying, amongst conservative women's on social media platforms.
Yeah.
But then also there is kind of a mold with guys that they try to form too with that kind of millennial group, to where sometimes I get to a point where I'm just like, all right, look, this is great, but at some point it seems very molded to me and I can't get down with it.
Difference. If there's anything that people say that is said crazy on Alex Jones's show, like I'm sure on the equivalent from Joy Reid, she said worse. Right.
No, that's the truth.
And she's been given a platform by NBC and Comcast that makes no sense. And she has tried to be more divisive and has literally made up lies and tried to basically start a race war. Right. Yeah, and so I can't, like, I have issue with that. And it's way worse, like on the grand scheme of things, incredibly much worse than anything that Alex Jones has ever done.
They don't have any ground to stand on anymore. I think the news is going so bonkers. Yes. Specifically, and why don't I say it this? Cable news, but now you might as well wrap in the Washington Post, the New York Times, things of that nature. It's all gone nuts. The things that I hear daily from any of these institutions that you would think used to be,
credible.
Well, yeah. I mean,
they're not.
You used to be able to respect these institutions. You can't. There's nothing to respect about these institutions anymore. And it's fun to see them even like it's, as you said, when you go and you throw Alex into the mix, it's like, yeah, you really
ultimately. So here's my judge is like, I judge character of people. Right. And I've never heard anything bad about Alex Jones personally. I have heard incredibly awful things about people in mainstream and people on other channels. And there have been evidence of incredibly awful things from people personally, from other things. And Alex Jones doesn't pretend to be something that he's not, where I think everyone else does. And I think, so that's the difference. So in a way, I have a lot more respect for the guy for just being Alex Jones and not putting on an air than most of these like
legitimate Matt Lauer with a push button.
Man, let me tell you something. Candace Owens got her start there, and people don't know that. She probably would never admit that.
You don't think she'd admit that now?
I don't. It'll be a real interesting conversation. I'd love to see it. If you ever get her in a room, be like, you ever remember what was it like being a different, and just see what she and because she was a regular guest, wasn't she, back in the day? I remember.
Yeah, she most certainly was.
It's very interesting. Like, I think it's one of those things. I just think that she would probably run from it. I don't like her.
Look, don't get me started. Me and you could go.
Go ahead.
No, because I'm of the same opinion. I think certain people like that served a purpose, but I feel like it gets to a point for me where it's legitimately a broken record.
So,
I don't want to hear it anymore.
Also, look, we're both Baltimore, right?
Yeah.
And so when there's a police shooting, my opinion on police shootings, she's the first. She like cannot get out fast enough to blame the black guy every time there's a police shooting.
Right.
Like, I feel like there's like a rush to like whatever to. For me, when there's a police shooting of a black guy that's like in mainstream news, because I grew up in Baltimore and I was trained as a public defender in law school in Baltimore, I'm like, the cop is probably the problem. Weird. Right? Because who am I? I'm a guy. Like, I'm just a guy that, like, before the 2016 election, I think I had like 20,000 followers on Twitter. And
That's
now
wild.
I just went over 600,000 the other day. And then like I've got like on Getter, I've got like 150,000 on, Instagram's like 100. And so like it's like you look at it and I'm like, I just have done the same thing the entire time. There's nothing new.
So
And
do you attribute like the environment, like how contentious it is,
yeah.
as being what kind of?
Oh yeah. Well, that and people are afraid to say stuff. So I get a lot of, one of my biggest compliments I get, and people will email me and tell me this, and they're like, "You say stuff that I wish I could say and don't." And because I don't think anything I do is remarkable, but there are so many people who don't do remarkable things that are remarkable for doing them now. And like I think the biggest example of that is Joe Rogan, right? Because Joe Rogan just asks questions that people want to ask. He's just a curious guy. He doesn't admit to being smarter than anyone else. He tells people not to take his advice on things. He just shares his opinion and talks to people and asks reasonable questions. And he's become incredibly famous because of that.